Congratulations, you made it through week 5 from script to screen. Let's summarize a few essentials. Well, what have we learned this week? In this module, you learned about the importance of choosing the right project. You understand the important steps from the inception of an idea for a film or television show to seeing it on the big or the small screen. You now realize the essential steps of how to choose the optimal project, securing the rights properly, developing the story to elevate its greenlight potential and its finance potential as well. You learned about the importance of packaging and attaching talent to elevate a project's value, and you understand how to connect this value when establishing a feasible budget. You now understand what ideas will sell and why they sell, and you now know how you can get them financed. Understanding the story elements to establish a commercially viable script is essential in order to be able to attract a buyer, meaning a distributor, or a financier. Developing a concept that sells is important, especially when you're trying to figure out what concept can actually sell and what can't. Packaging a director and cast is a little bit of a finical process, and you need to know what steps to take. You learned that you should attach the director first and the cast second, and you learned that you should not be attaching a director who does not see your vision and a cast who would potentially not approve of that director. You learned about feasible budgeting. You learned about establishing a commercially viable project by understanding the importance of sales estimates in connection with your project. You understand the elements that define the value of a project in the marketplace today, and you realize the steps of giving a film or TV show project on the screen, the big one or the small one. So by now, you can identify what kind of projects sell today and why. You can identify each step from the inception of an idea to seeing it on the big or small screen. You can differentiate between the various elements that elevate a value for your project and identify important greenlight criteria to get your project financed. And if you haven't done it yet, here's what you need to do this week. You're going to read the module sections from script to screen, choosing a commercially viable story, how to structure a commercial story, chain of title, packaging, how to attach a director, how to attach known cast, how to attach a showrunner, combining forces with the sales agent, keeping the budget feasible, getting a project on screen, and the summary module 4, which is the very module you're just watching. You should also watch the guest speaker interviews and watch the case study videos, and you should read chapter 5 in the textbook Entertainment Finance Today. We're going to have a Zoom session on Saturday morning. Your quiz 5 is due by Sunday night, and you should meet with your group to talk about your project business plan if you are doing this extra credit. While many producers understand the basic elements that are needed to get a film or television project greenlit, they still sometimes struggle with finding the right path. The path to greenlight is not always a straight and narrow line. Understanding what steps to take on the path to greenlight is essential in reaching the goal of seeing a project on the big or the small screen. And these steps include the following: chain of title. Make sure that you secure all the rights in connection with your project, including underlying rights, including script rights for an original story, and including any rights that are related to the project, as well as any turnaround provisions. During the development, really focus on making the story what it can be, pulling out the optimal value the story has by working with your writer in the way you've learned. Look at the acts, look at the scenes, look at the characters, look at the plots, make sure they're innovative, make sure these characters are multifaceted, and then make sure that the story reads beautifully in its dramaturgical approach. Financing. You're looking at the various finance options that you have about balancing financing sources is what you're looking at as well. And you're going to look at non-recoupable and recoupable finance sources to make sure you include them in a way that can optimize profits. You learn about production and delivery of a film. What kind of budget items do you need to take into consideration? How do you keep your budget feasible so it can be sold in the marketplace? And the last step is revenue and profits. How do you protect your revenues? How do you protect your profits? And what can you do to optimize both? How do we choose a commercially viable story, and how do we know what that actually is? Choosing a commercially viable story, well, it all starts with the writer and his or her producer. It's upon them, meaning the producer, specifically to guide the writer and to develop a story that stands out, has a chance to cut through simply because it's innovative, strong, and relevant. Producers turn ideas into reality, and they must understand a few things. Understand what a unique story entails and how to optimize it so it can stand out and attract commercial talent. It is the story that will drive you when you package a director to optimize your vision and when you attach cast for certain roles that they find interesting and that ideally elevate their range. Know how to guide a writer to get them to create a story that meets the target audience and market demand. So you really focus on the genre, deliver on the genre, be very true to the genre. You can mix genres. You can have an action comedy. It's still a fast-paced action movie with comedy elements in them. You can have a drama with comedic elements in them. You can have a horror with comedic elements in them. So there are certain ways of elevating the genre by adding elements to them, but you still have to stay true to the main genre. So when you do an action or thriller movie, make sure that the action or thriller movie doesn't become a drama because you take all the action elements out and tell the story in a slower pace. These are very important things. You have to stay true to the pace of the story when you're structuring the script with the writer. Let's take a look at some of the structural elements for a commercial story. As you can imagine, I read a lot of scripts. I get a lot of scripts sent to me to be financed, co-financed, produced, co-produced, and so forth. And I do read them, but often I find myself stopping after the first 30 pages. And the reason for that is that I can maybe not connect to the characters, or I find the story bland and have seen it before in a way, or it is a story that is told in a weak way in the first act, and I don't really find a way to connect to the world it's set in or the story itself, and I find myself confused or simply bored, or a combination of all of it. So the first 30 pages, in my humble opinion, are the most important 30 pages in your script, because it is these pages that draw in the reader, draw in the executive, the director, the cast, whoever you want to work with. Draw them in to make a decision whether or not they want to be a part of your project. So there's a few things I would like to share with you that I believe are important when commercial structures are applicable for a commercial story. Producers should consider these steps when developing a script for a film or television series. Research similar projects, detect what works and why, and be different. Establish authentic, multi-layered, yet flawed characters and create conflicts and hurdles for them to overcome in the most innovative way. And range. Choose twists and turns that are not predictable and truly surprise the reader and the audience in a memorable way. Create a world that is relatable, yet fresh, new, interesting, and tantalizing. Create a story that is relevant today, and tell us why. And what is relevant today? Answer the question of why anyone should care to see the story and why they would care about these characters in your story. Ask yourself what this story can offer to a director, an actor, an acquisition executive, and the audience that can satisfy their urge for enticing entertainment, range, inspiration, and surprise. Be different. The chain of title, that is in essence the chain of rights. Many times producers meet friends, and friends have great ideas, and they might have a script, and they hand it over to the producer to say, let's do this together. And then maybe you as a producer take some steps to get this project made, and maybe you attract some cast, maybe you attract some financiers, maybe you even have interest from a distributor, and all of a sudden it is now time to do a deal with your friend who had the script, and it gets complicated. because now people know, oh, this project is going to get made, and now the demand or the pricing could go up significantly. And I'm not saying this is actually going to happen, because I'm sure you have beautiful friends, but the point I'm making is, no matter what the situation is, just make sure that you protect yourself and your project early on by securing the rights you need to get the project made. So here are a few steps that I think are important for you to remember as you go about making your own movie or TV show. Chain of title. It confirms the correct and proper chain of the intellectual property from its inception of the idea to its exploitation with distributors. Option agreement. Secures the exclusive rights for a script or IP for a certain term. So an option agreement can also be for underlying rights. It can just be for the script. For example, if you find a story, maybe in the newspaper, or you have a video game that you heard about that is maybe not as big yet. It could be a video game in a certain country that is maybe really known in that country and not known outside the country. I worked on a comic series that was very strong in Belgium and France, and no one knew about it here in the US, and I optioned the rights for that, for example. So there are properties everywhere, or maybe there is a book. There are properties everywhere that could be great underlying rights for you to option, and then find a writer and hire them on a writer for hire basis to then start writing the script for you, or putting the Bible together and writing a pilot script. So whatever the rights are that you are envisioning using for the content that you're creating, you have to make sure you either have the option agreement or you buy the rights out. Usually it's cheaper to do an option agreement. Now here, think about the fact that sometimes people do these $1 options, right? The reason why it's $1 is because there needs to be a monetary exchange in order for the option to be legally valid. So even if someone says to you, oh, I'll give you a free option, don't worry about paying me, your answer would be no. I'm going to pay you $1, and you're going to take a picture of the check that has the $1 amount in it. You have to have a record of the payment you made to the rights owner. So $1 options are great, and I do them a lot when I co-produce my projects with the writers, for example, but I still want the rights to be handled properly. So in this case, option agreements are important for you to do, that give you the option to put a project together for a certain period of time. And in the option agreement, you also talk about the purchase price. You talk about, here's the price for the option, might be $500, $1,000, maybe a little more, depending on what it is. And then in the option agreement, you talk about, and here's the purchase price for the rights. Like, say it's a book that you're optioning, and then the purchase price for the book would be, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000. You put that number in the option agreement already, and that price or that purchase is going to be paid at a certain time. That is either when the option runs out, or it is when the project gets made. Those occasions is the time when these purchase prices are due. Just remember that a good option agreement would have the option fees that you're paying, not just for the first option, but also for the extensions that you're putting in, which should ideally be at least 2 years. These monies that you have paid should go against the purchase price. So the purchase price should be reduced by the amount of money that you have paid for the options. And then you have the purchase price in there. Again, it could be for a book, could be for a script. And you can then decide whether or not you buy out the script or the book when you cannot extend the option anymore, or maybe you let the option lapse and you're not going to continue on the project, or it's being paid for at the time the project is being made, in which case it becomes a portion of the first day payment. It's the first payment that is being made at the beginning of the production. And then you do the rights acquisition agreement, which is similar to excuse me, the option agreement, where it says I'm optioning, or I'm buying exclusive rights to purchase a script or underlying rights, or any kind of underlying rights that could be, as I mentioned, a book or a news article or a game show, a game, or anything that you base your story on. The rights acquisition agreement, basically, in comparison to the option agreement, would be you buying those rights out. You're not optioning them for a certain amount of time exclusively. You're actually buying them out. So here you purchase the rights for the story of the project that you're realizing. And then the writer's agreements, there are two kinds. There is the writer's agreement that is based on the original script owned by the writer. This agreement also includes rewrite provisions. So what the writer agreement is also like, it is also like a rights acquisition agreement. You're basically telling the writer, I'm going to buy your script rights to make a movie or to make a TV show, or I'm buying your script rights to make a movie in Germany, and then you're only limiting it to that market. Or you're buying a script for global rights, in which case you're not limiting it to a market. So there are different ways of buying the rights to a script that are going along with what you want it to be. Is it a TV show or a movie, or is it a web series, or what kind of content do you want to create? And then also, where is the content going to be seen? Because if you work with a writer who's an American writer, but you may be doing a movie in France and it's only going to be seen there and it's in French, so you do a translation of the script later of sorts, then you only really need those rights. Now, I would warn you to say that a lot of content today, even if it's just produced for a certain area, like if it would be a French movie in French based on an American script, you want to make sure you own all the other rights too, because many times that French movie travels. If it's doing well on the festivals, all of a sudden it's going to be purchased by a US distributor, and now it's being sold in the US as well. So there are now more and more the situations where local content travels out of the local region to become global. So I would say it is always easier to do a rights agreement where you purchase the rights for the exploitation globally. There is also a right of a hire agreement that you make. This is happening when you do have underlying rights. For example, you option a book and you want the writer to write the script based on the book. That would be a right of a hire agreement, because the writer does not base the idea on an original idea he or she had. This is an idea that is based on underlying rights, so someone else gave the basis for the story. It could also be that you have an idea. I've often come up with stories that I write down on a piece of paper like a little treatment, and then I register them with the WGA under the title that I want to use. It's often a working title. And then I hire a writer for hire to then make a script out of my idea. So that means the idea is still mine because I came up with it, but the writer executes it and gets paid for it. So they get paid for the script, they get paid for the rewrites, and you can do a deal with them where you say, I'm going to pay you this amount now, and I'm going to pay you more when the movie comes to fruition or when the TV show goes. So you could make deals like that, and you could also talk about, if you pay for rewrites, how much you would pay for rewrites. And these fees really are subject to the budget of your movie or your TV show. So it's much easier, I could suggest some numbers here, but it's probably easier for you to go to the Writers Guild website and look at what they suggest as the Writers Guild minimums. Those are the ones I usually use when I do these deals. And then if a writer wants more, if it's a very successful writer, obviously I have to put some money on top of that. But if it's a normal level writer, and I usually don't use like the high caliber A-level, theatrical writer to do this first draft, I often involve A-level writers at the time where I really just want to optimize my story so I don't have to pay a lot of money for all these rewrites. There is a development component to this, which would be an option that you would do. So in your development phase, you would have the option, you might have a writer for hire deal, you might have a rights purchase agreement, and you might have other costs that are applicable in the development phase. So we're not just talking about the purchase price or the option fees, we're also talking about rewrite costs. We're talking about some maybe scouting costs. Maybe you're going to the place you want to shoot and you're looking at the locations there to see how you can include those locations into your script. And it's very good for the writer and the director to scout out, locations that they want to shoot and maybe use some of the specific places and cultural references in their script. So those kind of costs will be part of your development cost. Also, when you start packaging, you make an offer to an actor or you make a development deal with the director, those costs would also be part of your development. If you do a Bible for a TV show and you do like a pilot script, those costs would be part of your development, and all those costs are also referred to as turnaround costs. And the reason why that is important is if you never get to make that movie or TV show and someone else will say, oh, this is a great idea, I kind of want to make that, and it's a different producer after you that actually gets to make it, those costs will stay with your IP, and that producer, that new producer, would then have to negotiate with you to pay these turnaround costs back to you. Because many times we're using investors to help us with the development phase, and the investor doesn't want this money to just be gone and never see it back because you couldn't make the movie happen, for example. So you can tell them that the turnaround costs that they have given you, the money that they have given you, they are connected to the IP no matter where the IP goes or no matter who is going to do the IP, if ever, but who is going to realize it. So turnaround costs include the cost of your entire development phase. Let's talk about talent packaging. Packaging is obviously very important when we work on a film or TV show because it creates and establishes value for our project. Choosing the right talent dictates the fate of the project. Once the producer manages to develop a script that is solid, it is time to attach a director and a lead actor. Meaningful actors increase the value of a project in the marketplace, as well as its commercial value. It makes sense to aim high. Steps for a producer to take when embarking on the packaging process include the following. Consider approaching and paying a talent agent to manage the packaging process. What that means is that you would contact someone like the CAA packaging department or UTA or ICM's packaging department and suggest your project to them and say, is this something you like and would package your clients with? Like, can you maybe put one of your directors on? Is there some cast that you would suggest to be playing in the lead? And then the agency would charge you a packaging fee in your budget, or you can also hire them on a retainer if you want. So both of these options are available for you. Look for a director that has track record. I always say this particularly for producers who start out with their first project. It is helpful to have a director that has some track record because you want someone in the team that knows what they're doing and can steer the train in the right direction. Look for a director whose view, his vision, matches or elevates the producer's vision, so your vision if you're the producer. Because if they see something else than you see, it's not the right creative choice. Consider hiring a casting director who has a track record and access to known cast. Casting directors really know, a lot of them really know what actors are looking for, where they are in their lives often, and what could be interesting to them. So they will make suggestions to you that you might not have thought about, because they might say, have you thought about this actor? They usually only do drama, but they're a really good actor, and they might be interested in expanding their range and doing this comedy. So these kind of conversations are important to have, and casting directors are a great resource for that. Consider attaching a lead actor that has a track record and is known especially in the foreign territories. The foreign territories have an important value to us when it comes to distribution revenue. So sometimes they're actually more important than our domestic territory. And you have actors that are right now in this moment much more known in the foreign territories or much more valued in the foreign territories that there would be in the US. Sometimes, and especially, those are actors who are not as hot anymore in the US, but they still have a very strong pull in international territories. So you have something good going for you here, because you can attach someone who might not be as expensive because their value might have seemed to be dropped here for the US market, but they're strong foreign. So you get a strong actor that still has value internationally, and you get them for a price that you can still afford. Check the actor's current market value by discussing options with the sales agents. So you do want to have a conversation with your sales agent before you attach an actor and saying, I'm thinking of attaching this person or that person or that person. Which of these three do you, sales agent, think makes the most sense in elevating the value of my content piece? Secure an equity investor to fund development and production costs and to back a pay-or-play offer. The way for you to attach the actor is by making a pay or play offer. And a pay or play offer is a binding agreement for you to actually attach the actor to the content. So you want to be very careful and knowing that when you make this pay or play offer, someone will pay this sum to the agency and the actor, even if your project is not going. So the conversation you have with the equity investor is that they understand the minute you attach the actor, the project is pretty much greenlit because the actor is the missing piece that gives its value to then be sold. So they understand that you're elevating the value of the entire project by giving it the value through attaching the actor. And that's why equity investors are perfectly fine source to have a conversation with to back these pay or play offers. Attach a seasoned executive producer to help manage this process and negotiate industry standard agreements and terms with talent and related parties. This is especially important when it comes to you being guided on the path of making this happen. Obviously, you can contact executive producers to help you finance it, but even if they don't want to do that or don't think this is the project in their wheelhouse that they want to finance, they can still steer you in the right direction of what steps you need to take at what time, what deals you need to close with whom, and what pitfalls you need to avoid. Because on a project that is your first project, it's going to be slightly overwhelming dealing with all these different parties that need to be dealt with and to be negotiated with. So sometimes it's helpful to have someone at your side that has done many movies or TV shows and can help steer you in the direction of making sure that your packaging process, as well as all the other agreements, are done in a proper way. And what specifically do we have to do when we attach a director? Needless to say, the director is probably the most important piece in your puzzle. Choosing the right director for a film project is one of the most important decisions for a producer to make, and there are some considerations you need to think about as a producer. Consider approaching and paying a talent agent to manage the packaging process to attach the director. We talked about this earlier here when I mentioned the packaging slide. Again, you can talk to a management or agency to see if they have someone that they want to attach from their roster. Look for a director who has track record. This is particularly important for producers who are emerging, but it's also important for producers who produce a certain kind of content. For example, if you are producing a horror film and you don't want to, and actually don't need to, attach a level cast, you want to attach a director who has a track record in this genre field and who has done horror movies that have made money. That's who you want to attach in this kind of a situation. Look for a director whose vision matches yours and elevates yours as the producer. Again, we talked about this before. You want to make sure the director doesn't see a different movie, otherwise the creative differences could be killing you and the project. Include a release condition like a kill fee provision in case the director can't be bonded or the cast doesn't approve it. So every director's deal should have a provision that says, if I cannot attach cast with you as a director on the project, or if the bond company does not want to insure you, I have to be able to release you out of this agreement, and here is what's going to happen. Maybe there is a kill fee applicable, which means you pay the director a fee to leave, or there isn't. Not every director agreement does have to have a kill fee, by the way. Sorry. Check the director's current market value by discussing options with the sales agent. Sometimes a director is not as important for a sales agent if the cast is A-level, but sometimes the director is important, like in the example I just made with a horror movie. So make sure to discuss your director's choices, that those are the ones you're considering right now, with the sales agent before you are attaching the director to your project. Secure an equity investor to back the pay or play and to fund development or production costs. So sometimes the director is going to work with you on the script, work with you during a period where you put the project together, and would require what we call a development fee. So that needs to be paid by someone, and it's good if you have an equity investor help you with that. And of course, like actors, directors too often require pay or play offers, which means you have to secure them in a legally binding way. Attach a seasoned executive producer to help manage the process of packaging. As I mentioned before, it does help sometimes to talk to executive producers, and maybe you have someone that you're choosing as an executive producer to help you with the process that has relationships to a certain director and can open the door. And of course, we need to also talk about how to attach a known actor, like make me an offer I can't refuse. In some cases, cast is actually even more important than your director. So choosing the right lead actor for a film project strongly impacts the value of the project, and producers should think about a few things. Again, first one is think about working with a talent agent to make the packaging happen. In this case, the actor, not the director. Look for a casting director who has track record and is established and has especially established relationships with the cast that you're going for. So research them on, let's say, IMDb, for example, and see what other movies they have made and who other actors they have worked with in those movies. And that will give you an indication if you are working with an established casting director that can open doors to certain actors that they have already worked with. Also here include a release condition in the actor's pay-or-play offer and engagement agreement that will allow you to let the actor go in case they cannot be bonded by the insurance company. The actor's current market value should be discussed with the sales agent before you attach the actor. Again, you want to think about a few options, then run them by the sales agent and have the sales agent get back to you with their choice of what would be optimal for your project. Confirm the actor approves your director. That's a very important one. I cannot tell you many times I was very happy to have a certain director on board and thought I had the best thing after sliced bread attached to my project, only to find out most of the actors I was going for, they were like, not great, I want someone else. So it is important to have that conversation with the actors to make sure that they are comfortable with the director you're choosing or have chosen. Secure an equity investor to help you package the actor and back pay-or-play offers. Again, these are binding agreements and you're going to have to pay the actor even if you don't make the movie. Attach a seasoned executive to help you manage the process. And here it's really about the negotiation process with the agent, because agents, when they know you're new, might ask for more things, for lack of a better word, than what they would if someone talks to them who has a little bit of experience. And also an executive producer of that level can push back a little when it comes to perk packages and all the silly things actors want, like I want first-class tickets for my nanny who is coming on the set with my 5 children, things like that. So you need someone strong on that side to negotiate with the agent. And they are not the easiest people to negotiate with, in my humble personal experience. When we're looking at television content, it's really not so much about the cast or the director. I mean, unless we're talking about A-level cast, of course, which always elevates any content we work on. But even then, the showrunner is probably the most important piece in that puzzle. The showrunner is to a TV series what an A-level actor is to a film. A series will have a harder time to sell unless it has a strong showrunner attached. And here are some things for you to consider when attaching a showrunner. Consider showrunners who are currently writers on successful shows and have written many episodes and may be poised to run a show at this time in their career. Consider a showrunner who has written a show in a similar genre. Be ready to make and pay for a development deal with a showrunner, which is negotiated with the showrunner's manager or agent, or both. Be open to ideas the showrunner has about the show concept. Be open to sharing the creator credit if the showrunner elevates the show idea. Engage a showrunner that can open doors to networks and streamers. Structure the finance plan for a TV show in a way that leaves variety for you as options on the table, like a split rights deal or a license deal, and allows for the IP ownership to be kept with the producer. This means when you put the show together and you put a killer showrunner on there who's really amazing, don't just hand it all over to a streamer or network unless they really pay you well and they really include you and keep you as the creator on the show, because this is your idea. This is something you put together. It wasn't the showrunner's idea. So you need to make sure that you keep that creator credit, because that is where the money is. In that case, if they allow this and they pay you enough, you can absolutely release the show and all its rights to the network or the streamer. which in many cases they would want. They would want to have everything because they don't want to deal with anything. But if, let's say, they would say to you, yeah, we like the idea, we like the showrunner, but we're not quite prepared to make this kind of investment for this show. Like the budget is pretty high and we only want to really do US rights for this. So consider a co-production deal with a US distributor like a streamer or a network where they could become a co-producer holding US rights in perpetuity forever and all the related US rights, and then you as a producer would hold all the international rights. And that's okay. You can do the same thing by just licensing the US rights to a streamer or a network, and then that license comes back to you after a certain period of time. That's the difference between a split rights deal, meaning a co-production deal, or a license deal. The license deal is for a certain term. The split rights deal or the co-production deal, there is no term. You're basically handing the rights over forever. So that's something to think about. It is important to know that any TV show that you are putting together is really driven by the US buyer, meaning the US streaming service or network, when it comes to valuing it in the international marketplace. Let's talk about how we can best work with the sales agent, because the sales agent is the most important puzzle in our mix when it comes to creating distribution revenues and profits. The sales agent decides what happens with the film, especially once it's finished, but also during the period where pre-sales are to be made in support of the finance plan for the film or television project. The sales agent issues sales estimates and establishes pre-sales in support of the producer's efforts to raise the funding for a film or TV show. The sales agent should have a lineup that allows for the producer's project to fit in well and be represented strongly throughout the term. What that means is, A, the sales agent should give you estimates that have take and ask columns, so both should be reflected, and the take column should be done in a way that support your budget. Secondly, the lineup is important because you want to make sure that you're not putting your project with a sales agent who is known for horror films and your project is a comedy. The buyers wouldn't even go to that sales agent when they visit the film markets because they wouldn't know that they can find a comedy there. So stick with sales agents who sell similar content in a similar budget range, or even in a slightly higher budget range, which elevates your project automatically. And then think about the sales agent who go to the market with 20 different titles every time. How are they going to sell the 20 different titles with focus? And how are they then going to focus on your project? So it is better to go to a sales agent who goes to a new market or goes to a film market with new titles that are maybe just 5 titles. So I would really make sure to ask the sales agent, how many titles are you announcing on the film market that you're going to next and where you're taking my content? The best approach with a sales agent would be done by the producer once the producer has attached equity and has the equity ready to back offers to talent. Because you don't just want to go to a sales agent and say, here's a great idea that I have, and I'm thinking of doing this, and I'm thinking of doing that, but I don't really have anything in place. You do need to think about being respectful to the sales agent's time and offering something that is also of a benefit to them. So when you go to them at a time where you have an interested investor based on a business plan pitch deck that you put together, and you're going to learn, of course, in this class how you do that, then you can have something to offer. You're going to go to the sales agent and say, I am working with an equity investor to help me fund this, but of course we need your sales estimates and we need your input in regards to the cast and director components that we want to secure and we want to make offers for. And these offers are being backed by my equity investor. So that's an important piece of information for a sales agent to have, because that will tell them this is a project that can actually go and is very real. The sales agents are found at the leading markets and festivals. So I would always suggest go to the Cannes Film Festival, go to the American Film Market. If you're not going to be there in person, consider the online versions that they offer to attend. And look at the sales agents there, look at their lineups, look at their booths and how they represent themselves, and make contact there. Just talk to them and see if you can find an acquisition executive that will spare 5 minutes to just talk to you about what they're generally looking for, what they're selling, and what kind of information for a project they would need in order to consider it to be a part of their lineup. Sometimes sales agents do sell the US rights. In many cases they don't, but sometimes they do. And in that case, you want to verify what kind of content they have sold so far to US buyers and who those US buyers in fact are. The budget is obviously an important component, but what is the right budget to keep it feasible and to keep your project sellable? Keeping our budget feasible, what does it entail? Given the marketplace shifts and changes all the time, budgets for film and television projects do the same. Producers must adjust their production costs in accordance with what the market can afford today. No matter the project, a basic strategy can be applied to all of them to establish a feasible budget, and this strategy includes some of the following items. Don't waste money by overpaying crew, cast, and service providers and locations. Throw out scenes in the scripts that don't serve the story and limit company moves to the various locations. Research low-cost equipment options that still provide top technical production quality. Research options to reduce post-production costs. Negotiate deferments and shift costs from the funding schedule to the recoupment schedule. Adjust the budget to the sales estimates. So what does it all mean? Obviously, you want to make deals with crew and cast that are in accordance with what they should be getting paid at this moment. So the crew deals and crew rates you can find out when you talk to IATSE. Maybe you do a deal with IATSE, the union in the US, where you can do a low budget deal and pay the crew a little less because the union allows you to do that. And then with the cast, obviously you're going to talk to the agent and share with them, here's my budget, here are my limitations. Let me know, if I can get this actor for this amount that I'm thinking of paying. Maybe I can defer some of the salary that I'm paying to your actor. Maybe I can give them profit participation or bonuses. So try to structure a deal that reduces the amount that would be paid out of the budget at the time of funding. The same for service providers. VFX, companies and post-production companies are very open to helping you fund your project in a way that they are not putting a burden on the front part, but maybe deferring some of their costs. And locations, how many do you actually need? What should they be? Maybe you can go to locations that are offered by the film offices and the incentivizing regions that you can use for free. Or maybe there is a location that you can use for all the various different scenes because it's versatile. Think about limiting location costs that way. We have talked about the fact that you should only have scenes in your script that actually move your story forward. We know we can fall in love with certain scenes in our script because we think they're funny or they give a special color to the character, and we don't want to lose them because we personally like them. But we really have to think about, are they actually moving the story forward? Is the scene giving a message that I need the reader and viewer to understand in order to follow the story? Because if that is not the case, the likelihood of that scene being cut out is very high. And why would you then shoot it in the first place? So research also how you can reduce company moves, meaning your whole entire crew has to move to a different location on a certain day. Is there a way to combine location? Is there a way to have locations close by so these moves can be as small as possible or eliminated? Obviously, you want to look at the equipment that you're choosing. You want to have a conversation with your director of photography to see how many lights they need, what kind of equipment they need, and see if you can make deals with rental houses. Research options to post-productions we talked about earlier by making sure that you maybe talk to them about deferring some of their costs, but also how many edit suites do you really need, and do you need edit suites at all if editors can maybe edit it from home? So there are ways for you to reduce post-production costs by optimizing the post-production flow. Making editors edit at home is one thing, but you can also limit the production schedule by making sure the director knows you have so much time to edit your movie and then you're done. Negotiate deferments obviously are things that you should always consider for anyone that's a part of your production. So anyone who is willing to defer some of their fees or services or costs or remuneration or salary into the recoupment schedule is going to help you elevate, reduce the risk and elevate the option for your project to be funded. You must adjust the budget to the sales estimate. So when the sales agent comes back to you and says, well, I can only get you a third of whatever budget you're thinking of making this in, that's obviously a bad sign. So you need to be in line with the sales estimates. And I always suggest your budget to be covered by 70 to 75% of international distribution rights revenues if it is a global content piece. If it's a content piece that is more appealing to the US market, then those estimates can of course be lower. But in that case, you need to verify that it actually appeals to the US market more. And then you need to put in a higher number for the US and make sure that that number is actually achievable. So these basic options and considerations can be applied to any film that is produced or any TV series that is being realized, and it optimizes the chance for green light and profits. For TV shows, it is really important that you do have a US buyer in play, a US distributor that already acquired the rights for your TV show in order to optimize and elevate the value for the television show and the sales estimates for your TV show in order to then adjust the budget in accordance with what those estimates are. What's important to know when we're talking about getting a project on the screen? In learning what can get made and be seen on the small or the big screen, producers should know what distributors and sales agents look for at any given time. What most US and foreign distributors and sales agents look for includes the following: mainstream films with known casts and track record proven directors, unique, strong, fresh stories that literally jump off the page, TV series with track record proven showrunners, budgets that can afford license fees paid by distributors today. So this means you have to, in the first case, look at a genre that is sellable right now. What kind of genres are sellable? Most of them are action, thrillers, horrors, fast-paced dramas, and comedies that can travel. Unique story, we talked about this earlier, is something that is not reminding me of something else or is predictable in its way, and is really standing out in the crowd of most of the stories we read about and have seen. You do need, obviously, a track record proven showrunner. We mentioned this before. It is very hard to sell any show unless you do have a strong showrunner attached. And as mentioned before, you want to keep the budget on a range that is actually affordable by the buyers today. The right sales agent is one that sells similar content in comparison to the project the producer is looking to make. Again, you look at the lineup of the agent and you make sure that your content fits into that lineup. Don't go to a horror selling agent with your comedy. Visit all the leading film and television markets and festivals and inform yourself of what's going on in the marketplace. See what other people are selling, see what the sales agents are selling right now, and kind of get a vibe and really also information about what sells today. Then figure out if the sales agent is bankable by the bank that you're choosing in order to have your pre-sale loans cash flowed and in order to have your gap loan approved by the bank, and also bankable in view of the equity investor. You want to be able to show to the equity investor that you're choosing a sales agent who has done very well on similar content. We did cover a lot this week, week 5, and it's a lot of very important information, especially when it comes down to getting your project on the big or the small screen. Take your time studying all the various modules, dive in there deeply, and if you have any questions, please email me on Canvas or set up a one-on-one meeting with me, and I'd be happy to answer them.